Yo, what's going on? It's your boy, Coach Frank, and we're back at the Make It Make Sense Health and Fitness Podcast. Today's episode, well, actually, let's keep things current. How was everyone's week? This podcast I'm shooting on a Saturday. So I did have a very productive week. My girlfriend and I are actually getting ready to hike. What's it called? And please forgive me if I mispronounce it. Havasupai, in July. I think it's like a 8 to 10 mile hike down to a campground, and we're down there at the campground to see some waterfalls, some springs, for I think 2 3 days, and then we'll hike back up. And again, I think it's like 8 to 10 miles. So what I did in preparation of this hike, because it is actually more taxing than any of the hikes that either of us have ever done. To date, the toughest hike we have done has been Upper Yosemite, up at Yosemite National Park. That one was like a 4,000 feet elevation. We weren't prepared, but for the length of that particular hike, but we did it, and it was a lot of fun too. The hike, and what I tell people, for us anyway, the hike is the experience and the views and what you get to see. It's the accomplishment is, what you're able to see with your own eyes because you did that hike. So Upper Yosemite, you got to think with a 4,000 feet elevation, it was awesome. It was amazing, but it was longer than we expected. So for this one, we're 2 weeks in. We're about 10 weeks or so out from the hike. So I developed a program for us. It is a progressive that I will be releasing on my for as part of one of my programs to help people get ready to for an extended hike. And man, I gotta tell you, we are into week 2 of it, and whoo, it is it's been something, I gotta tell you. But it's a lot of fun. I mean, a lot of the training is because neither of us have ever hiked with like a trekking hike backpack before. We just have like the water packs. So our training for this particular hike includes weighted vests on hikes. So we do 2 hikes a week. We'll trail on Thursday, and then today's being Saturday, we'll do a hike with the weight vest on to prepare us for to hike with the big trekking pack, things like that. So that is what's going on around here. Other than that, I think we have a pretty quiet weekend, which is really cool. It's we'll just be spending a lot of time together, and I like when we do that. I like our time apart, but I like when we are able to spend time together. We really support each other in that facet. And actually, that is what today's episode is going to be about. It's going to be about support and having the support of your partner. So I have 2 stories, one female, one male, because I bet everyone thought that it was going to be just only female based, but no. All right. So I'm not going to use real names. However, whatever. I'm not going to use real names, but so the first, we'll say her name is Dawn. Dawn was 27, 28, roughly, because she was coming up on her 10-year high school reunion. She was a married mother, stay-at-home mom, and up until this point, she hadn't really done much other than, she had a beautiful family, husband worked, they had 2 kids, but she didn't really do much outside of taking care of the kids. So getting out and getting a trainer and going to the gym was, was all big for her. And you could tell, just in the way she acted, you could tell she wasn't used to being around that setting. She was funny sometimes, but she was a great client. Worked very, very hard, very inquisitive. I love when a client asks questions, because, you know, it's your body. I mean, people go ask questions about like multiple questions about buying a shirt, about buying a car, buying pants, all these things. But they'll get to a trainer and just be like, yeah, just tell me whatever you want to tell me and I'll eat it all up. Sure, whatever you say, and they'll never ask questions. So, you know, and I'll say this, if your trainer does not encourage you to ask questions, then you need to seek a new trainer. I remember actually when I first started working at LA Fitness, they had me shadow one of the longer tenured trainers, and he um and he told me, Frank, all you want to do is bring the client to the exercise, uh, count the reps, tell the number of sets, and then just move on. And like I was like, okay. And I was doing that, and I swear, like I was like, everything is like a 2 week pay period, 2 weeks. I was doing 2 sessions, and the sessions were 30 minutes. So I was doing one session on Wednesday and the second session the following Wednesday. That's all I was doing, following this guy's particular plan. Luckily, at the time, I was dipping my feet into the bodybuilding world and working with a trainer by the name of Monica. And she was asking me how was the process going at LA Fitness, and I told her, and I was like, man, I'm not getting any clients at all, just doing what this guy said. And she was like, man, Frank, what are the things that you like about me? And I was like, you let me ask questions, and she was like, well, you don't think your clients want to do the same thing? And I was like, yeah, I guess so. All right, so fast forward, I changed my whole process of training, and instead of just me like dictating training, I started working with my clients. I made sure my clients counted their reps. I made my clients, knew the sets. I just made sure my clients understood the building of the workout, while we're starting with this muscle group and while we're going to that muscle group. These are things you should be able to ask your trainer. Okay, like, why are we doing this exercise? Why are we doing this many reps? Why are we doing these things? If you get a trainer, don't just let them tell you what to do and believe it'll automatically work, because it's not true. Every workout doesn't pattern everybody, doesn't have the same success for everyone that does that workout. It's all going to be different. I mean, you got to think, if everybody ended up with the same thing, then wouldn't everybody look the same? But clearly there are differences. So there are things that are going to happen. But always be able to ask your trainer or your coach, why am I doing this? Okay. What is this going to do for me? How does this help build what my problem area is? How does this help, diminish or minimize my area of improvement? And ask these questions. These are it's your body. You should ask these questions. So fast forward, Dawn, Dawn would ask these questions. And initially she didn't know to ask them, but I would just tell her. And then she started asking questions. And then she started learning, and she loved to be quizzed, and she loved to be tested on the things that she was learning. And one of the biggest things for her was actually going home proudly and telling her husband everything that she was learning and how good she was feeling and how strong she was becoming and how independent she was becoming. Now, these all sound like very good things, right? You would think. Don kept up with training. I'd like to say we got it maybe 6 weeks, a month and a half, maybe close to 2 months. And then after that, One day Don doesn't show up. Now Don trained um 3 days a week. Don trained on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Um, and then one Wednesday, I was trained on Monday and Wednesday, and then she worked out on Friday with her husband. Because I had met him. One Wednesday, Don trained on Monday. We had a breakthrough because the beginning of the week is always going to be lower body with me. So she had a great leg workout. Went home, told her husband, what did I say? His name's Jeff. Went home, told him about it. Wednesday, Jeff comes in. Hey, what's happening, man? Where's Don at? Don's sick. She's not gonna be able to work out today. I'm like, all right, cool, okay. So he's like, yeah, so I'm gonna do the workout today. I'm like, all right, cool, no problem. And then, we worked out. Thursday goes by, and Friday, I see him and Don. I'm like, hey, Don, how's it going? Uh, glad to see you're feeling better. And she like gave me like a weird look. And like they just and they, Jeff like grabbed her, put his hand on her back and they like walked her away. They walked away. And I was like, man, that was really weird, right? So that's Friday. The weekend goes by, Monday comes by. Don doesn't show up again. It's Jeff again. Yeah, Don's sick. And I'm like, all right, fine. We do a workout. Tuesday goes by, Wednesday, Jeff, Don sick. Thursday goes by, Friday, I see Don and Jeff working out. And then she looks at me and she kind of speaks, but like puts her head down and walks away. I'm like, wow. Okay. So, all right. Weekend goes by again. Now we're at Monday and Jeff just comes in and just says, hey, yeah, Don's not going to be training anymore. I'm going to be using the rest of her sessions. I was like, wow. Okay. And, to some people might say, Frank, I don't see what happened there. And I'll tell you, it's a very, very common thing. And it's one of the main killers of progress in the gym. And just one of the roadblocks and biggest issues is the insecurity of the male pride. Uh, what was happening was his wife was becoming happy without him, and he just didn't like it. Um, and the thing is, and the only reason I can say it was that is because I've seen it so many times, to be honest. I mean, the number of boyfriends and husbands that I've met or just wanted to meet the guy that their significant other kept talking about. It happens on a regular basis, and then once they meet me, they understand, you know, it's not a big deal. We're just training, and then everything just, goes accordingly. But like, yeah, there have been times when, there have been females that have said like, yes, my husband or boyfriend, said I can't train with you anymore, Frank. And yeah, that's very unfortunate. But at least she still worked out. I think years later, I think I was working out one day and I did see them. They were cool enough to speak and, water under the bridge, it's whatever. I did see him in the gym, so that was all good. But yeah, it's one of those things, um, I tell everybody that when, your partner has to support the growth in the person you're trying to be, like every part of it, because when you're working out and you're on your fitness journey, there are a lot of things that are going to happen. You're going to grow you should grow in so many different ways. You're going to grow physically, obviously, because, you're watching what you eat, you're getting a better quality of sleep, you're doing some strength training, some cardio, you're losing body fat, you're building lean muscle, you're learning how to lose body fat and you're learning how to build lean muscle. So, your life, takes over this big change and the person that you're with has to be okay with this change. They cannot be jealous of it, and they cannot stand in the way of it. But it is a common thing. And so, I always tell people that if you work out or if your other works out, make sure that you work out too. Make sure that you do something too, that you have that same feeling, that you guys have a common ground. I'll tell people, my girlfriend and I are like we have very different backgrounds, but we have a very, very common foundation. We're both disciplined. We're both hardworking. Um, we both love to work out. We both love the gym. We both have a foundation in that, and it's what we like to do. It's I don't know. It makes things easier. I tell people that when you're doing these things, because working out does change you. That you have to be with someone that's willing to change and accept the change. Um, So yeah, shout out to Don and Jeff. I hope they're still working out. But like, yeah, that is a situation that has happened. Um, as I adjust my Niners hat, uh, just to throw out again, I went to Levi Stadium and I went to the Niners Stadium and I got some cool Niner hats from the Niners Stadium. So it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Um, but all right. So let's all right. Second story is from the male side, right? Um, we'll call this guy Nathan. All right. So Nathan was referred to me by a friend, office worker, introverted, not overweight, but um had a high, I would say had a high body fat. Was athletic, because he did play soccer in his pastime, but um, was approaching the age that, hey, I want to get rid of some of the fat. I want to build muscle. Uh, and again, like I was just stating, if if your partner is gonna go on this journey, this fitness journey, you have to be willing to go on this journey with them. You cannot stand in the way of it. You have to encourage them. If that's truly your partner and they're doing something that makes them happy, you should anyway, assist and make that process that much easier for them, right? So, Nathan um started working out, started gaining confidence. His old wardrobe was was the wardrobe of a guy who had gained some weight. Was the wardrobe of a guy who had low self-esteem. Was the wardrobe of a guy who only went to work. Who was the wardrobe of a guy who really just didn't think that much of himself, right? But as you work out, you learn so much about who you are. Because I got to tell you, before I got into this whole thing of what I do now and the way I talk to people about fitness and things like that, it was never me. Never. It was never in my environment, in my world, to even be able to think about doing something like this. Like I tell people all the time, I was the guy with the nice personality. That is who I was growing up. I was the guy who was fun to be around. Like, I that's that's it. But as I got into training, like I learned a part of me, and and I never felt that I was better than someone else. I only felt that I was better than who I used to be. And what made it even better that I was or greater actually, that I was better than who I used to be was that I worked for it. Like it was because of me. Like there were many times I wanted to give up. There were many times I felt like this thing of working out and eating correctly, like it doesn't work for me. I'm like I'm different from all the people that it does work for. I'm different. Working out and eating correctly and doing cardio will never work for me. But when I stuck to my journey and I just stayed true, and like on the days I didn't want to work out, I just kept pushing through. That's when I saw like, oh man, this actually works. Like I tell people all the time, like my actual breakthrough was what was it? I'll never forget. I was getting ready for work one day, and I was brushing my teeth, right? And when I was brushing my teeth, you lean over the sink to, do spit. I leaned over to spit, and I like looked back down at myself, and my stomach was still flat, like it wasn't hanging down. I was like, yo, what? This this thing actually works? There's no way this thing actually works. And it was like, yeah. And since then I was absolutely hooked. It was but it was that feeling that I got is why I train, and why, as opposed to trying to teach people to lift heavy weight and do these things, I teach people to understand why they want to do this work. I help people understand the importance of doing the work, and I help people understand the importance of doing the work correctly, right? So go back to Nathan, sorry. Go back to Nathan, and Nathan is now starting to put on lean muscle. He's losing some body fat. Not only that, he's gaining some confidence. The shirts that he used to wear are too big now. So I remember the first time he told me, like, Frank, man, I'm going to buy new clothes. So he went to the store, bought new clothes, shirt that fits. Now he works in an office, so he can wear a button up that fits. And I got to tell you, there's nothing better that, as a man, I would say, than having a body that you've worked for and putting on a nice shirt and having that shirt just accent your chest and and the work that you put in. It is a great feeling. And then I gotta say, this dude was so happy. And then he went home. He went home with the same happiness, showed his new clothes to his wife. First thing his wife says is, so are you working out and buying new clothes so you can divorce me and get somebody new? No, congratulations, honey. No, I've been with you X amount of years. I know this is something that you've been working for. I know how early you get up in the morning to go train. I know, how you've been sticking to your meal plan. It immediately went away from his hard work to her insecurity. And he still fights and he still trains and he still works out, but he still fights that battle every day of also being with someone who is trying to stand in the way of him being happy. Now, that is a tough one. And that is another thing, people think that because you you have this internal pain or whatever, or this pain point of who you see yourself as, and you no longer want to see that yourself as that person, and the person you expect to be your strength, be your support, to walk hand in hand with you, is your biggest negative, your biggest detractor, the biggest hurdle. the biggest roadblock. Um, and that's tough. And to be honest, it's one of the things like when people say, or you'll hear those trainers say, all you got to do is get up and train and get up and go. And it's like, man, people deal with real situations involving, just their household and being able to just get up and go train. Um, you know, and and I've told this story before, but I'll just finish with this. And I remember I used to train this, and I'll end with this. I remember I used to train this girl from New York, and she had like the typical, New York attitude. But like I've said about this story before, like she and I, we clicked. I kind of have that, blunt, whatever type delivery, cold, not cold, but I have a dry sense of humor. So we were cool. Plus, I grew up with a lot of guys that were from New York. So I mean, that type of personality I was used to. She was real cool with me. As long as she did the work, I don't care. With any of my clients, as long as you do the work, I don't care what you say. Because everybody has to do their thing to get through, right? So one day, sorry, one day she comes in and she's just giving incredible pushback on everything I'm telling her to do. Won't do exercises, like just mouthing off, like all kind of shit, right? I go, I just pull her to the side, and I'm like, "Yo, hey man, what's happening? What's going on?" I was like, and I don't know what made me say this, but I just said to her, I was like, "Look, I know everybody in your life doesn't want to see you change," and she just started crying, just tears flooded, right? And I was like, oh no. I grabbed it, like put my arm around it. We went into the spin room, which is nearby at LA Fitness. I know when the lights were off, and I'm like, "Yo, hey man, what's going on? What's happening?" And she was, "Frank, it's just so hard. It's just so hard to get here. And I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "It's just every time I'm getting ready to leave." I'm getting dressed, like he being her husband, he just, he calls me a fat bitch. He tells me, that the work I'm putting in, it's not working. He tells me that, I'm never going to change. And he's the only person that's ever going to love me. And I'm never going to find anybody else, and I'm lucky that he loves me. And, just all these things. And he just like, just straight verbal mental abuse, emotional abuse, just for her to be able to leave the house to come train. After she delivered all that information, that was actually the last time I saw her. I never saw her again. I tried reaching out and contacting her. The number ended up getting changed. So I was never able to speak to her again. But, it just brings one of those things that, it's not as easy as, just getting up and going to train and just going to the gym and just eating healthy and that's your thing. And to be honest, I typically like to have a solution for those things, but I don't know what to say when someone is in those situations other than, focus on or always try to adhere and maintain to your goal and who you want to be. I'm not a marriage counselor, so I can't tell you what to do in that regard, but I can always tell people, you should seek happiness. But um but today's episode was just about support and and just giving examples of how people actually don't get the support from the people that they expect to get it from, and how it can affect someone's actual fitness journey. So you got to keep that in mind. So if you're getting ready to start your fitness journey, make sure you talk to your partner. Let them know, hey, I've given this some thought. This is what I want to do with myself. This is the time it's going to take. These are the restrictions that I plan on putting on myself. Are you on board with this? make sure that is there. Don't just throw things on people, because at the same time, whatever you've been thinking about for some time, depending on when you deliver it to that person, they may be hearing it for the first time, right? So you have to that, respect a timing frame of them to think about it, to let it come to them. But there has to be an understanding, and there has to be a good support system if you're going to want to move forward in your fitness journey and anything. Your partner has to be just that. The people that you allow close enough to you to be a support system, they have to do that. They have to support you in what your goals are. All right. That's why with my clients, I allow them to come to me with anything, because I want to support them in everything that they're doing to make sure that we are getting to the ultimate goal of our partnership, which is to change their life for the better. Right. So we'll wrap up this episode. I feel we said some things today. I appreciate it. I hope everyone has a great day, great weekend. If you feel someone, could gain some value from today's episode, make sure, you send them to the link. If, you're getting ready to start your fitness journey and you need some assistance, you can always DM me, message me, follow me on Instagram at Frankly Fit. That's PHIT_fat loss expert. Yeah. And if you don't know, you do now. The motto is be grinding or be nothing. Peace.